Ben is dining at a fancy restaurant with his family. He noticed that serving the water at his table required twice the number of waiters as the table next to him. Why? And I'll give you that again. Ben is dining at a fancy restaurant with his family. He noticed that serving the water at his table required twice the number of waiters as the table next to him. Why?
The first thing that springs to mind for me is that you can't reach the water. You can't get across the table to give the person the water because of the position of the table. So you've got one waiter who pours the water and then passes it to the next waiter who then passes it to the person. Like it's a big banquet table. Like they're putting out a fire with buckets.
It did say fancy restaurant. And I think there's a rule in fine dining that you must serve plates from one side and clear plates from the other. Can't remember which one it is, so, spot the person who doesn't go to fancy restaurants. But I'm wondering if, they couldn't get access round one way. But I feel like this is not lateral enough.
What's so different about this table compared to the other table?
What I will say, for the sake of this question, you can picture the platonic ideal of a restaurant. This is a restaurant
I hate that.
where you could assume spherical tables in a vacuum kind of a restaurant. The layout of this restaurant and the placement of the tables is of no import. Forget about it.
Okay, that's very strange. So what's wrong with the people then?
Is it one of these fancy restaurants where everything's really performative?
Oh.
Where there's a bit of a show in the presentation of the water, where the water is served out of a boot by a cow or something, and that in order to bring the cow in, they need to use two waiters for that particular table?
The magician rolls up the newspaper and pours water in, and then it disappears.
Exactly.
Is there anything about a way that their table, the guests are split? So as a wild example, I don't know if there's anywhere where this is true, where men have to be served by men, women have to be served by women somewhere.
It is not that, but you are getting much closer. It is to do with the people at the table.
Some of them are children and they just have big sippy cups. No, that doesn't require twice as many people. This is the thing. It's twice as many people. It's not that it's slower. It's not that it's more difficult. It's that it requires twice as many people, which, the number of people required to serve water at a table is one.
Yeah, that's my basic assumption.
Yes, yeah. And you can assume that the other tables all had one waiter serving water.
What if it was a situation where I know traditionally you would have the wine and the person who is pouring the wine, you always have to pour the wine to the head of the table. It's usually to a man, and they get to taste the wine first and have a sip and so on. What if you've got a situation where you've got two people who are at the head of the table, two people who are in charge, which means they've got to simultaneously, it's kind of some sort of rule of culture that requires these two people both be treated equally at the same time.
Oh, it's the king and the queen at the same table, and you can't preference one over the other.
Oh man, Ben is dining at a very fancy restaurant.
Yeah.
It's King Ben.
King Ben.
Why didn't we pick up on this?
Again, I love the idea, but not quite, not right in this one.
Not gender-based, not status-based. How else can people be different from each other?
And the water's not different. It's just the water.
Practically, no. The water itself is not different, though this, I suppose, is to... It does still treat the water differently, as in the way they've brought the water is separate and equal.
Is it to do with the type of water that they ordered? That at this particular table they ordered two-person water? I don't know what two-person water is, but particular type of water.
I shall have sparkling and I shall have still, and never the twain shall meet.
That's right. Yeah, it's everyone else is getting tap water, and this when you get the fancy water, you get two people.
I will say the water is the same, but the things that have been served to the people at the table have been very separate.
Is it that they ordered something super spicy and so everyone really desperately needs water quickly because they've all been eating spicy food and they're going, quick, bring us some water, bring us some water?
Not quite. Damn it. I think if you follow Dani's question of what could separate people at a restaurant, that is not status or gender, but something else that might separate how they're treated.
How much they've paid.
What are some things that you might need to know about people who are at a restaurant?
Allergies?
Interesting.
Like, I know people with strong allergies, and I don't think they need to separate out the water. And even so, why would it need a second person to serve it?
And this may be where the fancy restaurant is taking things to an extreme for service.
Is this some sort of... I mean, I don't want to describe it as performative, because I don't want to insult the folks out there who have really strong allergies. But is this a very expensive restaurant that is going to the lengths of separate kitchen, separate water, separate bottles, separate everything, separate serving staff, because someone at the table is celiac or has a nut allergy or something, and even the water is separate?
Yes, you have nailed it. It is due to what was listed as a gluten allergy, but presumably treated as if it was celiacs. They had an entire separate waiter serving gluten-free food to one of the guests.
Wow.
This is a real story from Ben. One member of Ben's family was gluten intolerant, and to avoid any possible cross-contamination, there was a single waiter dedicated to serving just that member's food, and another way to serve the rest of the table. And for consistency, and possibly also to avoid contamination, because celiacs can be pretty intense.
Oh, yeah.
They also served the water separately, wearing protective gloves.
You know what? That sounds like overkill if you don't know anyone who's celiac.
I had to do some tests for it a few years ago, because there were some suspicions that I might have. And when I was, Googling it, it was intense.
You can't have gluten in the house, in the building. You just should not ever be anywhere near it. So.
No, I know someone who a drop of soy sauce can shut down their digestive system for 2 days and put them in bed for a week. Yeah. No, if you go into a fancy restaurant and you're paying that money, honestly, that's reasonable.
And being a fancy restaurant, you would hope that they would be able to make you feel comfortable. So if they're presenting the water while wearing gloves, then you know that behind the scenes they're going to be even more careful. So you feel comfortable.
Yeah, like you call it performative, and it is in a way performative.
I don't want to call it performative. Well, it's not. That's the wrong word.
Performative isn't, like, we don't have to have the negative connotations to that. Performative can be very important.
Yeah, Tom, you say you don't believe in allergies, but actually...
Don't you dare!
And all of this actually did happen to Ben, the question writer. And he says, the waiter came out and said, "Who's having the gluten-free water?" So yes, at this fancy restaurant, one waiter was dedicated to serving gluten-free food.
The Lateral book is out now. Just click on the link to get your copy.